Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Grant, and I represent the City and County of Broomfield, and I'm the chair of the DRCOG Transportation Advisory Committee. I call to order the November 18th, 2024 DRCOG TAC meeting at 1:30 p.m. This is an in-person and live stream meeting format. Members of the public attending by Zoom have the ability to mute and unmute themselves and share their webcam. For those attending online, please be sure your name is typed and reflects your first and last name and your representation. We ask that those intending to speak to use the raise hand button to ask a question or comment on the agenda item. If you have any technical questions, you can direct them to staff in the chat box. As a reminder to members and alternates here in person, please press the unmute button on the bottom of your mic stand and make sure the light on your microphone is on and you are prepared to speak. Speak directly into the microphone so your voice will amplify. Please announce your name and representation when asking a question or making a comment for the record. During the business agenda, TAC members and alternates can speak or ask questions, and members of the public may speak during public comments. DRCOG is sending around a sign-in sheet. Please do sign in, and at this time, we'll do introductions for TAC members and alternates here in person. And we'll start with Carson.
I was afraid of that. Carson Priest, TDM Special Interest State.
Michelle Riccio, Adams County.
Brody Ayers, Aviation Special Interest Seat. Brenton Soderlin, Arapahoe County, City of Littleton.
Jessica Mickelbust, CDOT Region 1.
Mike Whitaker, represent Cap Lakewood.
Ellie Van Brecken, City of Arvada. Christina Lane, Jefferson County.
David Krutzinger, City of Denver.
Bruce Jogan, City of Westminster, Adams County.
Jim Kotzer, Arapahoe County.
Art Griffith with Douglas County.
Jeff Boyd, Housing Special Interest.
Jeff Dankenbringer, Arapahoe County, City of Centennial.
Sam Kennedy, DRCOG staff.
Sarah Grant, City and County of Broomfield.
Jacob Rieger, DRCOG staff.
Andrew Rivera, sorry.
Ron Papsdorf, DRCOG.
Andrew Rivera Malpieti, Equity Suite.
Jim Houston, Region 4, Greeley.
Dean Sampson, City of Boulder.
Chris Quinn with RTD.
Kira Moore with the Regional Air Quality Council.
Justin Schmitz, Douglas County, City of Lone Tree.
Chris Hudson, Douglas County, Town of Parker. Alex Hydrate, Boulder County.
David Gasper, City and County of Denver.
Carolyn Clam, DRCOG.
Jennifer Bartlett, City and County of Denver.
Hillary Simmons, A Little Help, Senior Special Interest Seat, Boulder.
Thank you. At this time, I'll hand it over to Jacob for some announcements.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Grant. A couple things. Most of you should have received at your place. We also have copies in the back. This handout, which is the first few pages, but not all 25 pages, of a notice of funding opportunity from the state non-attainment air pollution mitigation enterprise. This is the Community Clean Transportation Assistance Grant Funding Program. We will send out kind of the full document to you all in email after this meeting, but we wanted you all to have it. This was a new enterprise, one of 4 that was created under Senate Bill 260. And this funding solicitation is for a variety of projects that, again, kind of relate to improving air quality, reducing air pollution. So there's a wide range of projects and somewhat wide range of eligibility. So we wanted to get this out to you all so that you are aware of it. So that's one thing. Second thing is, as we get towards the holiday, just a friendly reminder, I know last month was a really long meeting. Today, frankly, is going to be a bit of a long meeting, and our December meeting might be a little long as well. So I know everyone's busy. We've got our schedules. This meeting is scheduled for 2 hours. We try not to give you 2-hour meetings every month, but we're in a stretch right now where we've just got a lot going on and a lot we want to present to you. So just kind of be prepared.
Sorry, Ron Papsdorf, just one more thing on the non-attainment area, NOFO. We are working with CDOT staff to hopefully have CDOT staff come at the December TAC meeting to talk more and answer detailed questions about the notice of funding opportunity.
Jacob, thank you, Ron. And now we'll move on to public comment. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes, and if you've joined by Zoom, please raise your hand by pressing the raise hand button, and we'll call on you to begin speaking. If joined by phone, please raise your virtual hand by pressing *9, and we'll call on you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Staff will unmute you, and you will unmute yourself by pressing *6 on your phone. You will have 3 minutes to speak, after which we'll ask you to wrap up and your line will be muted. As a reminder, after the public comment period, only TAC members and alternates may partake in the discussion regarding each agenda item. At this time, do we have any public comment here in person? Seeing none, do we have anybody with their hands raised online? Seeing none, we will move on to the next agenda item, which is the meeting summary from the October 28th, 2024 TAC meeting summary. This is attachment A in your packet. Is there any discussion, corrections, or questions about last meeting's summary? Wonderful. Seeing no comments, meeting summary will stand for the October 28th, 2024 TAC meeting. This time we'll move on to the action item of the agenda. We have several action items today that Jacob alluded to, so we'll move on to our item number 4, the Innovative Mobility Set-Aside Project Selection, and this is attachment B in your packet, and this will be presented by Emily Lindsay, Active and Emerging Mobility Program Manager.
Can you hear me now? Beautiful. Good afternoon. I'm Emily Lindsay. I'm Manager Active and Emerging Mobility Program at DRCOG. I was last here this summer to talk about this opportunity, and I'm here now to present some set-aside project recommendations. All right. So for folks, just some background about the Innovative Mobility Set-Aside. This is a new TIP set-aside, so this is the first time we've done this solicitation for projects. For the Innovative Mobility Set-Aside, we have $4 million available in the current TIP, so over a 4-year period. These are DRCOG staff-managed projects, and the funding is really for consultant and vendor services. There was no request for match. These are fully funded thanks to toll credits via CDOT, so thank you, CDOT. And really the intent of this set-aside is to prepare the region for innovative mobility and to invest in collaborative learning opportunities associated with some of those topics. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but I think just to re-emphasize that this is a new set-aside, we have specific goals, and really those goals helped us prioritize the projects and kind of contextualize the work in our overall work program, really so that we can learn from one another as we invest in emerging technologies and plan for new mobility. All right. So to get us to this point, we went through a project selection process. We solicited letters of interest, kind of short applications, during September and October. So the project proposal window was open for over a month. At the close of that window, DRCOG staff from Transportation Planning and Operations Division and Regional Planning and Development Division got together to evaluate projects. The evaluation criteria are listed here, but really you'll see some familiar themes, kind of the connection with MetroVision, our MetroVision Regional Transportation Plan, collaboration and partnerships, which I think was a really, you'll see kind of in the project proposals, was a really important piece. Innovation, as the set-aside name suggests. Transferability, so again, thinking how we can learn and learn from one another. Project readiness and equity. So we were very excited that there was a lot of interest in this. Like I said, this is the first time we've done this call for projects. We received 16 applications. You can see those listed here and in the packet. The topics really ranged, which I think we're excited about. That we know the innovative mobility space is a very large umbrella, so it touches on a lot of different topics. And we were really excited that member governments and partner agencies really kind of saw that opportunity. And so as a result of the scoring and project selection panel recommendations, we came up with 7 projects that are listed for funding. I did want to call out that one of them, the Arapahoe County project, you will also see in the next presentation. So that one will kind of be a little bit of a related project, but that is really focused on the micromobility aspect, so focusing on the innovative mobility piece. But other than that, we saw some partner projects. We saw some mobility data related projects, thoughts on mobility on demand, which is exciting, and some analytics projects. So again, kind of zooming in on mobility data. So you can see the recommended budgets for each project are listed in your packet and on the screen. And I'm happy to answer any question, but this is kind of the first step in the process for you all to recommend to the Regional Transportation Committee the projects for funding. So happy to take questions about any of the projects or the process.
Thank you, Emily. Is there any questions for DRCOG staff? Any additional comments? Well, we have a recommended motion in front of us if there's no questions or. Go ahead.
Yep, I move to recommend to the Regional Transportation Committee the innovative mobility set-aside projects for funding as recommended by the Selection Committee.
Thank you, Justin Smith, and that was seconded by Angie Rivera Malpiede. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Emily. Move on to the item number 5. This is the Livable Centers Set-Aside Project Selection. This is attachment C in your packet. This will be presented by Caitlin Service Program Manager.
Afternoon. I'm Caitlin Service. I'm a program manager in the Regional Planning and Development Division of DRCOG, and I'm happy to be here today to speak more about the Livable Centers first round of project selection. As Emily said, I was here also in the summer to inform that the project was about to open for letters of interest, and now I am back to share a recommendation for project selection. So just a quick recap of the program. This is a set-aside identified in the current Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. The program will use consultant services to create small area plans that focus on enhancing livability on multimodal centers within different communities across the region. The program goals and project evaluation criteria were adopted by the board in 2023, and those program goals are derived from MetroVision, the Regional Plan for Growth and Development. They include supporting centers and their connections to the regional multimodal transportation system. There's a strong focus on coordinating land use and housing strategies with a multimodal transportation strategy, and a goal to improve access to housing, transportation, and services in key central locations within different communities across the region. The call for letters of interest was conducted August through October of 2024. The projects were evaluated based on criteria that was approved by TAC in February of 2023 and adopted by the Board of Directors in March of 2023. That evaluation criteria included alignment with MetroVision, benefits to marginalized communities, connections to the Regional Transportation Plan, project readiness and support, and innovation and transferability. A summary of the projects that were submitted is listed here. There were 12 letters of interest submitted, and of those, there are 7 projects that are recommended for selection based on alignment with the evaluation criteria and alignment with the program goals. So the projects that are recommended for selection have a strong alignment with the program goals and a really nice integration of land use and housing strategies with a multimodal transportation strategy. Each project provided an estimated budget in their letter of interest, and final budgets will be determined through the procurement phase after we have more time to collaborate with the project sponsor and put more detail into the scope there. So I have a motion to hear, but also happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Caitlin. Questions or Dr. Cog? And there's a recommended motion before us.
I'll move to recommend to the Regional Transportation Committee funding the 7 livable cities small area planning projects in the first cycles of the Livable Center Small Area Planning Program set aside as recommended by the committee.
Second.
Sorry, who made the second? Oh, hi, Frank, you're over here. Thank you, Frank. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Caitlin. Really excited to see the Innovative Mobility Set-Aside Program and the Livable Centers Set-Aside project selections move forward. Move on to item number 6, the amendment to the 2024-25 Transportation Improvement Program, attachment D in your packet. And this will be by Josh Schwenk, Senior Planner for DRCOG.
All right, thank you, Chair. So just to start out by putting this into context, last month, TAC did recommend a set of amendments to our Transportation Improvement Program just because of the way committee schedules have shaken out in this part of the year. Those have not yet gone to RTC or the board. Those will be going to RTC tomorrow and the board on Wednesday. But we do have another set for you today. These are also planned to move through the process through RTC and the board this week. So to start out, for these first 2 projects on our list, these are both related to the return of funding, from the city of Englewood. So the funding came back to the Arapahoe Forum. DRCOG staff, in line with the TIP policy, then reached out to the sponsors on the Arapahoe wait list. However, there were only 2 sponsors on that, or 2 projects on that wait list, and the funding was declined for both of those. This left us in a little bit of a bind, as our TIP policy does not explicitly state what to do in this situation, but working through the Arapahoe Forum, they did ask if any project sponsors of currently funded projects had cost increases related to changes in their scope. And both of these projects from the City of Littleton and City of Centennial did come forward, and the forum did recommend additional funding for these 2 projects in the amount of $3,390,000 for Littleton's Mineral and Santa Fe project, and an additional $2 million for Centennial's Arapahoe Side Path project. So we are recommending these be added to the TIP, or the additional funding be added to the TIP, but as part of the motion in your packet, you will notice we are also requesting an exception to our TIP policy to allow this slight divergence from what is explicitly written in the TIP policy. Staff will work to make sure that this is clarified in the policy in the future. The other projects on your list are related to new federal discretionary awards. So CDOT Region 4 has received $11,539,000 in federal infra funds for a safety project on US 287. The limits here to this project state to the Larimer County line. The full project goes up to the Wyoming border, but we are only including the portion within DRCOG in our TIP. Then we have a Protect Award to the City of Golden, $23.8 million for their Lena Gulch project, and then $4 million in a Protect Award to the City of Denver, for their Sanderson Gulch project. So with that, happy to answer any questions related to these. Otherwise, I do have the recommended motion available for you here. Again, just including that slight exception to our stated TIP policy.
Thank you for the overview, Josh. Are there any questions or comments for DRCOG staff? Art Griffith?
I would like to move to recommend to the RTC project amendments to 2024 to 27 TIP, including the exception the TIP policy to allow Arapahoe County sub-regional forum action.
For the second, Jeff Tankenbridge. Is there any further discussion? There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations to Denver and Golden for their Protect Fund grants, as well as the CDOT Region 4 for the US 287 Infra Award. Congratulations. Move on to item number 7 in the packet. This is fiscal year 2024, the Transportation Improvement Program project delays. This is attached in your packet. This will be presented by Brad Williams, planner.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brad Williams, planner with DRCOG, and today we'll be going over fiscal year 24 first year TIP project delays. Our current TIP policy outlines the expectations for the initiation of project phases, including how to address delays if they are to occur. These delays, regardless of the reason, tie up the limited funding available for DRCOG to allocate. At the end of FY24 in early October, DRCOG requested CDOT and RTD review the statuses that we've collected from project sponsors over the year for the projects with FY24 funding. After confirming these project statuses, DRCOG staff contacted the sponsors with phases that were not initiated as of October 1st to find out the reason for their failed initiation, to discover the current status of the project, and to assist them with a plan to initiate the delayed phase. To avoid a second year delay, all projects identified in this report must initiate their phase by July 1st, 2025. This report states that 22 projects have been first year delayed, of which one has already been initiated since October 1st and is no longer delayed. Just some casual observations about this. We have 22 delays this year compared to 35 last year, which is very exciting, but we also are aware that the primary reason is because we're further out from our large call for projects, and these projects have had more development time over the same since that last call for projects. As for why many of these are delayed, most are due to normal clearance issues, CDOT design review, utilities right away, that kind of stuff. And most of the rest are due to continued hangups with CDOT's procurement process. I have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but I would like to thank everyone, most of the people in this room who have helped us with our project tracking system by giving us excellent monthly updates that have helped us develop this report. So, Madam Chair, if there's any questions, I could take those, and if not, we have our motion on the screen.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for that overview. Any questions for DRCOG? Person?
More of a comment for Brad. I don't know if you were mentioning one project has been executed, if it was smart commutes or not. Is that correct or no?
The one I was referring to was Thornton's project. I have,
I have an update to give. I just wanted to clarify that before. Smart Commutes project has been executed with RTD as of October 31st, and we're good to go in contracting.
That's fantastic. Could you send me an email with some of the information?
I thought RTD already had, but I'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions or comments for DRCOG? Seeing none, we do have a recommended motion. Please state your name. The motion.
Chris Hudson, Town of Parker. Move to approve staff recommendations to continue each project.
Thank you. We have a second? Art Griffith, I guess, made a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Brad. Next Next item is item number 8. This is the amendment to the 2024 to 2025 Unified Planning Work Program. This is attachment F in your packet, and this will be presented by Josh Schwank, Senior Planner for DRCOG.
All right, hello again, everyone. So just as a reminder, our Unified Planning Work Program is the work program for DRCOG staff related to our federal transportation planning funds. We do occasionally bring forward amendments to our document just related to changes that have occurred within the course of the program time period. So right now, the primary reason for this amendment is a change to the Consolidated Planning Grant, or CPG funds, that are listed in the funding tables in Appendix C. We have been informed by our federal partners that any increase in federal funding shown in the document does require a formal amendment. So as part of this, we are also adjusting the amendment procedures shown in the beginning of the document to clarify that. Additionally, in Appendix A, at the back of the document, which lists other planning activities occurring in the region, we've included some additional information that was requested by our partners at the Federal Transit Administration related to some of their funding awards, and then just some minor text edits throughout the document. Happy to take any questions about any of the changes to the document. Otherwise, we do have a proposed recommendation for you in your packet.
Thank you for the overview. Any questions or comments for DRCOG? Seeing none, if you make a motion, please do state your name for the record.
Justin Schmitz. We move to recommend to the Regional Transportation Committee the amendment to the 2024-2025 Unified Planning Work Program for the Denver region.
Thank you, Justin.
Frank Bruno, I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you.
That concludes the action items for today. Move on to the discussion item part of the agenda, which is item number 9 in your packet. The Denver Regional Council of Governments and the Colorado Department of Transportation Active Transportation Plans. This is attachment G, and this will be presented by Aaron Villery, Senior Active Transportation Planner for DRCOG.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Aaron Villery. I'm the Senior Active Transportation Planner here at DRCOG, and I'm mostly here to introduce my counterpart from CDOT, but I just wanted to give you all some updates about both the statewide and the regional active transportation plans, which the major updates are happening concurrently. So we're very excited about that. So I'll start with just some connective tissue. I've spoken to this group about DRCOG's active transportation plan when we kicked off the project earlier this year. But it's a major update to our region's active transportation plan and includes a vision for walking and bicycling and emerging micromobility modes in the region. It provides tools and guidance to our member agencies, to our partners, and it identifies actions for DRCOG to support active transportation throughout the region. So you've seen this before. These are sort of the general scope items, but I wanted to make sure to provide this so you can sort of just see the connection or the interlocking pieces between the state and regional plans, a large outreach and engagement component, an update to the regional active transportation network, and then some guidance around design and delivery of pedestrian facilities, bicycle and emerging micromobility facilities, and then, of course, an analysis of economic benefits of active transportation and some program and policy updates. So those are the major pieces of DRCOG's active transportation plan. Where does it fit in or where are we in the timeline? So we really got the ball rolling this summer and late spring, conducted some initial engagement. We're currently developing our active transportation network updates. So that is underway. We've also gotten started with developing some of our guidance around bicycle and pedestrian facility design and delivery. and have some things happening, a lot of things in motion over the winter, and we'll be developing the plan finally in the spring and summer of next year. And finally, just want to call out that we're very excited and grateful to be working in close partnership with our counterparts at CDOT. So we have biweekly coordination with that team that you'll hear a lot more about now, as well as mutual membership in each other's plan advisory groups and coordination of our networks. And so these plans, we really are viewing these as we want to make sure that we're well coordinated, we're in lockstep. So with that, I am excited to hand the dais over to Annalise Van Vano, who is the Bike Ped Program Coordinator for the Colorado Department of Transportation.
Thank you, and thank you, Aaron. As Aaron said, I'm Annalise Van Vano. I am the statewide bicycle and pedestrian program manager for CDOT, and so I have been helping lead our statewide active transportation plan. Okay. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of our active transportation plan, as well as some highlights from phase 1 of our public engagement, and then go over our draft goals and kind of where we are in the plan timeline. So just a little bit of an overview of our plan. It is important to note that this is not a project-based plan. It's much more of a policy and strategic plan. So this active transportation plan will be setting goals, vision, policy recommendations, strategies, and action steps to improve walking and bicycling across the state of Colorado. So we're working to integrate with local and regional bicycle and pedestrian plans. As Aaron mentioned, we've been working very closely with DRCOG to make sure our plans are aligned, because, you know, this statewide plan is not supposed to supplant or take away from local plans, but really is a way for us to figure out how we as the state can best support local and regional bicycle and pedestrian plans. Another thing that we're doing as part of this plan is creating a tool. So we're working on a map-based web tool to prioritize active transportation investments across the state, and also working to integrate with other statewide planning initiatives. So a little overview of our process and timeline. We got started back in April and have been doing a lot of data analysis, looking at the current state of active transportation in Colorado. And now we are working on refining the vision, our goals, and developing strategies, and again, working on that project prioritization tool. So we've had a couple phases of public outreach and stakeholder collaboration, which I'll touch on a little bit more in the next slides. But we are hoping to wrap up this plan in April of next year. So a little bit more about the public and stakeholder engagement. Phase 1 was our public survey, which was open for most of the summer. It was open from June 12th through September 13th and had over 3,000 responses statewide. So in another slide, I'm going to kind of dive into the results we saw in the DRCOG region. But this survey really looked at active transportation activity, barriers, facility preferences, as well as asking overarching vision questions. And then our next couple phases look at vision, goals, and strategies, and then our phase 3 of we'll be looking at implementation. So we've assembled a statewide community advisory committee for this process. And so that consists of local and state agency representatives, MPO and TPR representatives, as well as bicycle and pedestrian advocates. So we have several of DRCOG's member governments who have joined this committee, as well as representation from DRCOG itself. So we had our first meeting back in September, and we're going to be meeting 2 more times between now and when we finish up the plan in April. So the next meetings are scheduled for December 18th and March 12th. So if anyone else would like to join, you're still more than welcome to join this Community Advisory Committee. Just feel free to shoot me an email, and I'm happy to add you to the future meeting invites. And so here's just kind of a overview of all the different Community Advisory Committee members. I think we've had a few join since I made this slide, so it's not totally inclusive of everyone, but just to give you a good idea of who all has been involved so far. All right, and now I'm going to dive into an input summary from the survey that we did this past summer. So again, this survey, we distributed it statewide, and we had over 3,000 respondents. And, you know, it's important to note that this survey, it's not a random sample, it's not necessarily representative, but we think we were really happy with the outcome. But we distribute it through a variety of channels. You know, it was posted on the CDOT website, it went out through CDOT social media and email distribution lists. We also sent it out to our Community Advisory Committee members and asked them to send it out to their communities. It was shared by a lot of bicycle and pedestrian advocacy organizations, and we also promoted it at in-person events such as at Bike to Work Day over the summer. So we had 1,653 respondents in the Denver metro area, kind of overlapping with DRCOG. And, you know, I think this is really, it makes a lot of sense. It was about a little over 50% of survey respondents were in the Denver metro region, which is pretty similar in breakdown in terms of the overall state population. So some of the results we saw that overwhelmingly most people have access to a vehicle. About 90% of folks had access to an automobile. And there was also really high rates of access to bicycles. So about 86% of our respondents reported having their own bicycle that they had access to. And so at least with the vehicle access for autos, that's pretty similar numbers to what we see in the American Community Survey. So we feel like it was a pretty representative survey sample. So we also asked about travel modes, and for this question, we really asked them how often do they use driving, biking, walking, and transit to reach a destination. And so we specifically asked them to exclude recreational trips. And we see that, you know, the vast majority of people drive at least a couple times a week, but after driving, the most common travel mode is walking with, I think it was about 69, almost 70% of folks walking at least once or twice a week to reach a destination. So this is not including recreational walking, which we know makes that number even higher. And then biking, we had about almost 60% of folks, about 59% of folks reported biking at least once a week. We also asked about facility preferences. So in here we saw that most people are very comfortable on sidewalks as well as multi-use paths, but when it comes to shoulders or grass or walking on a highway, you know, most people are not very comfortable with that. And so with this one we asked, do you feel confident, comfortable? Would you walk here if you have to, or would you never walk here? And so this is just showing you the percent of respondents who said they were confident or comfortable walking on these types of facilities. We did the same thing for bicycle facilities. And so as you can see here, the vast majority of people are very comfortable on multi-use paths, which are the most popular option, followed by bike lanes with physical protection. About 3/4 of people are pretty comfortable on a buffered bike lane, but it drops down significantly to only about 50% who are comfortable riding in a bike lane with no buffer or barrier, and even less who are comfortable riding on sharrows on a residential road. And then again with, you know, facilities such as a highway shoulder or just a highway, very few people are comfortable riding on those types of facilities. survey also asked about barriers to both walking and biking, and so we see a few differences between the results for walking versus biking. So within the DRCOG area, distance and time is pretty much the number one barrier that people cited as the reason why they don't walk more. And so that really shows us that, land use and looking at short trip opportunity areas is really important for getting people to walk more. And then after distance and time, too much car traffic, feeling unsafe to cross major streets, lack of sidewalks were really the top three that stood out after distance and time. So that really looks at, improving infrastructure and making it feel safer, making sure that those facilities are there. And then concerns for personal safety also ranked pretty highly there as well. When it came to biking, distance and time is a little less important when it comes to biking, which at least this was a little bit different in some of the more rural areas around the state. So at least within the DRCOG region, people feel distance and time for biking is not as big of a concern as in some of the more rural areas of the state. But too much car traffic encountered, lack of dedicated bike lanes and paths, and concerns for personal safety were the top ones when it came to barriers to biking. And then another one that showed up pretty highly was this lack of bike parking. And we saw this not only in this survey question, but also in a lot of the free response answers to some of our other questions. A lack of secure bike parking and fear of bicycle theft came up a lot, especially within the Denver metro area, as major concerns and major barriers for people not biking more. And then finally, we asked a very broad kind of open-ended question about, what is your vision for walking, biking, and rolling in Colorado? And I pulled out a couple vision statements here, a couple of the responses, and then looking at themes across these different vision statements. The ones we really saw come to the top were infrastructure, folks advocating for more separated bike lanes, safe intersections, continuous sidewalks, just improvements to active transportation infrastructure. And then other themes that came out a lot were convenience, wanting a seamless, connected network where they could really feel safe walking and biking wherever. Safety was another huge theme. And then also destinations and transit. A lot of folks talked about wanting to be able to get to those essential destinations, wanting to be able to get access to transit stops, and those really being high priorities for improving walking and biking and access to those areas. So with that, I will move on to our draft goals and some of our next steps. So working with our community advisory committee and after, working closely with some of our local and regional partners as well as our state partners, we've drafted a couple key goals for this plan update. So our draft goals are safety, equity, mobility choice, and connected communities. And so right now we're in the process of kind of refining these goals, making sure the language is something that we're happy with, and then developing objectives and strategies and performance metrics for each of these goal areas. So with that, our next steps, we're continuing our stakeholder engagement, working very closely with our community advisory committee. Our next meetings for that are December 18th and March 12th. We're also working very closely with DRCOG, meeting with them, as Erin said, every couple weeks to make sure that our plans are in alignment. We've also been making the rounds and working with all the different rural TPRs. We've been doing these active transportation and transit sessions with all the rural TPRs around the state, and we're making sure to kind of come to all of the MPOs and present and get their feedback as well. So right now we're working on finalizing the vision, the goals, and strategies, and then also working to develop and refine that project prioritization tool that I mentioned earlier. And then once we hit December, we'll be working on developing the implementation plan, and we will aim to have a draft of the plan ready for review in March. So I hope you guys will stay tuned and take a look at the draft plan when we have that available and give us any feedback you would like. So that is all for me. Thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Annalise, and thank you, Erin, for the update on both the CDOT and DRCOG transportation updates. Really great to see these forward in a coordinated fashion. Any questions for CDOT or DRCOG? Oh, maybe Ron has a few words first.
Thank you, Grant. Annalise, thank you so much for being here. One clarifying question first on the presentation on slide 10 on sort of the preference survey of different types of facilities. I saw maybe a result I didn't expect in terms of 89% of respondents indicating they were confident or comfortable walking on a narrow sidewalk next to a road, but 75% comfortable or confident on a multi-use pass. Can you talk about that, please?
Yeah, that's a very interesting survey result because I did not expect that either. And I think one of the things that, and I can't explain it entirely, this is the result that we got. I would say one of the reasons I suspect might be the case for this, because you look, it's 75% for people walking, but then 93% for people biking. And I've noticed I've gotten a lot of concerns and complaints from pedestrians, especially since e-bikes have become much more popular. There's feeling like there's a lot of pedestrian and bicycle conflicts on multi-use paths. And so I think, you know, for bicyclists, they feel very comfortable using multi-use paths because they're completely away from roadway traffic. But I think for pedestrians, it can make them a little nervous being so close to bicyclists. I've gotten a lot of complaints and people in the survey, as well as just people emailing me talking about pedestrian and bicycle conflicts on multi-use paths. So I think that's what it's getting at there.
Thank you, Annalise. Just a quick follow-up. This, the survey questions look a lot like the survey that DRCOG conducted when we completed our last active transportation plan. Did you use our survey questions, and was your survey statistically valid random?
So again, it was not a random survey. I mentioned that in the introduction. We distributed it pretty widely and tried to get a wide variety of people to take it, but it's not a random sample, and so it's not exactly representative. We did get a lot of respondents, and we were pretty happy with the number we got, but I can't say it was random. In terms of DRCOG's previous survey, I think we developed this separately. We might have looked at DRCOG's old survey questions, but that wasn't like the model, but we did develop it independently.
Michelle?
Hey there, thanks so much for giving this overview. I'm curious, I know you said this isn't a project-based plan. For the implementation component, what are you thinking that will be shaped like or will consist of?
Yeah, good question. So we're developing a bunch of different strategies, and so the implementation plan will be really looking at like who is responsible for implementing those strategies. And also, you know, we are developing this project prioritization tool. So I think a lot of implementation for CDOT at least will be figuring out how to utilize that tool in our other planning processes so that we can make sure we're directing our active transportation investments to the places that are most impactful.
Callison?
Thank you, Annalise, for the presentation. In your survey, did the notion of speed or adjacency to high operating speeds on vehicles enter into uncomfortableness or barriers to utilization of bike and ped facilities?
Yeah, that definitely is the case. I mean, I think a lot of that comes out in the too much car traffic encountered, both for bicycles and pedestrians. They don't like to be very close to cars, regardless of the speed. But certainly, I think lowering speeds and looking at how we can manage speeds to be safer for bicyclists and pedestrians is a big part of the strategies that we're recommending.
Justin?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I had the same question you did, Ron. I thought that was a little interesting, some of those results. The other point you mentioned, and I thought that was good, was I think 24%, right, that we're concerned about more bike parking. I guess it's something that we don't always think about when you're doing some bike designs and how important maybe that element is. And we're seeing that result. And I was thinking about it, like if you drove your car and had nowhere to park, you would obviously not be able to drive your car, right? So just something as locals, that maybe it is a bigger demand that's out there. And maybe as we vet through this in both our local plans and the state plans, how do we really focus maybe on bike parking as something we all haven't really tackled that much? So I think that's an interesting result that maybe is something we can actually make some improvements on, right? Some of the other stuff's a little more challenging, but maybe that's one of something we can actually try to tackle. So.
Yeah, I think especially as e-bikes become much more popular, you know, e-bikes are quite expensive, and people do not want to be leaving their $3,000 e-bike just outside randomly, you know, locked to anything. So I think, yeah, I saw that a lot in kind of the open-ended responses as well. That bike parking was, and fear of bicycle theft is a really big barrier to more people using it as a transportation mode.
And we're seeing lots and lots of e-bikes in Lone Tree these days. So yeah, I think you're exactly right.
Thank you. Curious if you collected demographic information outside of kind of the map and geography. I'm thinking specifically age. And if you did, do you have these results somewhere that people can access?
Yes, we collected, these are only just like maybe a quarter of the questions. We had a lot more questions on there, including demographic questions. So we did include age, race, a couple other demographic type questions. So those will all be included in the final report. I just don't have them in this presentation. Thank you. Yes.
Hillary. Chris.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. And also thank you for acknowledging e-bikes on sidewalks as a frequent downtown rider, or walker, I should say. I can't tell you how many times do I have to pay attention to a 3,500-pound car and a 200-pound bike at the same time. But my question is concerns for personal safety. I want to dig into just slightly more. Is that walking and biking conflict with a vehicle, or is that more of, say, personal safety, like unlit road or unlit sidewalk, or an area that is a little, quote, sketchy, end quote?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, and I don't 100% have a good answer for that because the survey just said concerns for personal safety, so people could kind of interpret that however they wanted. I think when we drafted the survey, we were thinking more in terms of like personal safety is like, are you afraid that you're going to get robbed or you know, someone's going to hurt you? But I think a lot of people, and especially we saw this in the bicycle results, I think we're interpreting it as personal safety in terms of like, are they going to get hit by a car? So it's a little hard to tease that out, whether it's personal safety in terms of, you know, just related to cars hitting them or not. So I don't have a good answer for that. I think we were anticipating it not being about being hit by a car, but I think a lot of people interpreted it that way.
Andrea Rivera-Malpiedi.
Thank you, Annalisa. That was really a great presentation. My thing goes back to bike parking as well, especially with e-bikes. Did anyone talk about infrastructure and charging stations being available throughout the corridor as part of the piece that they'd like to see?
That's a good question in terms of like bicycle charging infrastructure for e-bikes. I would have to go back and double check some of the results. I don't recall that being a major theme, but I think we might have had a couple responses around that. Definitely bike parking was a pretty major theme in a lot of the open-ended questions. Bicycle charging, less so. Thank you guys very much. And feel free to email me if you have any additional questions, or if you want to join the Community Advisory Committee. Would love that. Thanks.
Annalise, thank you, Erin. We'll move on to the final discussion item in the packet. This is item number 10, the Front Range Passenger Rail Update, attachment H in your packet. And Jacob Rieger, Multimodal Transportation Planning Manager, will present this topic.
Thank you, Chair Grant. Good afternoon, everyone. As you all likely already know, there is a lot that's been happening in the Front Range passenger rail space. The Front Range Passenger Rail District and the District Board have been undertaking a lot of activities both internally and especially externally with moving this project forward through the Service Development Plan, federal grants. In the last legislative session, there were several pieces of legislation that affected the work and the funding of the Front Range Passenger Rail District, working towards a ballot measure. There's a lot going on, so we thought this would be a really good time to give you an update on the activities related to Front Range Passenger Rail. And so to do so, I'd like to introduce Chrissy Bright, the Chief of Staff for the Front Range Passenger Rail District.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, you sure? Yes, it will. Okay, good to see you all today. I appreciate Jacob's comment that things are happening fast and furiously. I made this presentation about 2 months ago for the DRCOG board and RTC, and looking at it today, there are things that are old news, and so I recognize there's probably more things to talk about than what the slide deck covers. Additionally, I recognize at least 5 people in the room who I owe emails to this week, and so I know the level of familiarity in this room probably spans from those that know my project better than I do to those it's the first time hearing about it. So I will try to do my slides fairly quickly and then really open up the room for discussion because I'm sure there are a lot of great questions in the room right now. All righty. So the basic agenda that I have for today is to just do a refresher what the FRPR project is. I was here about 14 months ago, so as Jacob said, things have evolved, but want to make sure we have the same foundation. Updates on the project side, speak to the recent legislative session, and look at kind of what we've accomplished over the past year, what we're trying to accomplish in the next 2-year look ahead. And this video may or may not play, so we're going to find out. Play. Oh, nope, that's not going to work. Okay. I'll pull it up, yeah. Let's see if I can do that quickly. And if all right, I think I can just do this, right? Will that work?
Yeah, I have to choose.
Oh, okay, I'm gonna get out of your way and let you fix things. Did I break it? Is that what you said? No, you're good. All the tech stuff. Start from this. So what is our vision through passenger rail? It's safe, efficient, reliable travel, job growth and local economic development, mitigated congestion, and supporting of Colorado's air quality goals, and expanding our access to housing and employment options. Our current project proposal is looking to be using the existing freight tracks, and that helps us to minimize the costs and expedite service in the nearer term. As of yet, it's 9 initial primary stations between Fort Collins and Pueblo, including Fort Collins and Pueblo. We have a long-term goal of connecting to Wyoming and New Mexico. The current state of play is looking to do an initial service, kind of Denver to Fort Collins by 2029, and then have full corridor service from Pueblo through Denver to Fort Collins by 2035. Intercity passenger rail is faster than light rail and commuter rail, the RTD services that we're used to in the DRCOG region, and looking to probably improve the corridor to up to 79 mile per hour max speed. It doesn't sound very exciting when you say it in this way, but just for context, looking at probably an average trip time from Fort Collins to Pueblo, just over 3 hours. It's also funny to use that stat because we recognize that less than 5% of trips are the full corridor distance, but for anyone that wants to do a long journey, that's the travel time. As Jacob mentioned when we started this presentation, I'm from the Front Range Passenger Rail District. I'm from the largest special district in the state of Colorado. Legislature created us in 2021, and we really have the sole purpose to plan, design, finance, construct, and operate the passenger rail system along the Front Range. We have a robust 24-person board of directors, including 4 members from DRCOG, and we are working closely with CDOT, RTD, and the Federal Railroad Administration. So about this time a year ago, 11 months ago, we were accepted into a new IIJA program called the Corridor Identification and Development Program. Really, its sole purpose is to help states like Colorado that do not currently have passenger rail to really incubate new services. As part of this program, there's preferential access to discretionary funding to help support local planning from kind of initial feasibility planning, service planning, and NEPA work. And we are part of that program now and working on putting together kind of our asks of the program to get through the planning process. Everyone has heard about our service development plan. We are making progress, I promise. Our route, stationary, and ridership analyses are completed. We are currently in the thick of it with operations and service modeling with the host railroads. Essentially what that means is that we are doing RTC modeling. So we are modeling the current freight network, the projected freight network over the next 30 years, and then adding passenger operations to that model to really understand what kind of infrastructure improvements are needed to enact passenger rail. And by doing that in coordination with the host railroads, getting their buy-in on the capital improvements that we see are the ones that they also buy off on. From there, that really drives the capital cost estimates and some of our financial plans for that. The current goal is to finish our SDP in kind of Q3, Q4 of 2025. And again, speaking to things that were accurate 2 months ago, but no longer accurate, we plan to be having public outreach in Q1 2025. This is looking at our alternatives analysis. We've done enough ridership modeling and looked at service options to get a kind of a sense of where do we want to do our full build service. And so we're going to be presenting out the results of that to the public and to stakeholders, inshallah, January of 25. For those that have been part of this conversation for a while, there's kind of a stakeholder group that gets briefings on this before the public. And so for those of you that are on the list, and many of you are, you will be invited to our stakeholder briefing before public outreach. And likewise, we'll be reaching out to you all to help kind of promote the public outreach opportunity. Also, local station planning. So this service development plan does feasibility studies around stations and kind of really shows the FRA that this is a feasible project, and here's where stations make the most sense operationally. But it really comes down to working with local governments to really site and develop those stations. Earlier this year, we finalized station location criteria. It addresses sort of operations, environmental connectivity matters. We've distributed it to local governments, and we are in the process now of working through siting those stations and kind of helping local governments get their kind of hands around the planning for that and operations needs. Generally speaking, we have 9 primary stations, and about 5 of them have prior planning that we're adopting, which leaves about 4 stations that we are working with to kind of help have a locally driven process for kind of, for lack of a better term, putting a pin in the map. Again, this slide, it felt so fresh 2 or 3 months ago, and now the slide feels a little stale, so I'm happy to take questions about this process. But in legislative session, there were 3 primary bills that kind of touched on passenger rail and in Front Range context. One was our district administrative cleanup bill, not terribly exciting, but it's boundary cleanup, working on some of our quorum clarification, clarifying board terms and appointment deadlines, things that matter a lot to Jacob, but probably not to many of the rest of us. Okay, that's funny to me. Okay, so SB 184, I'm sure we've all heard a lot about this one. This is the one that imposes the new fee on rental cars with the idea to generate funding that can be used to advance passenger rail, intercity bus service, bus staying, mountain rail, and other things to kind of really bring some real money for capital improvements on rail and intercity bus projects. And the last one is SB 230, that's the new oil and gas production fees, kind of a broader use case for those, largely looking at existing and new transit and rail connectivity kind of projects. 184 is especially important for Front Range passenger rail because it has some collaboration requirements between Front Range Passenger Rail District, RTD, CDOT, and CTIO to work through kind of some implementation plans and governance models to figure out how these entities can work together to deliver passenger rail north of Denver to kind of really bridge the fast tracks and Front Range passenger rail conversations. We have done a lot over the past year. A few things that we have done, as I mentioned earlier, accepted into that federal corridor ID program. The Front Range Passenger Rail District Board has adopted route and station markets by resolution. We've done extensive outreach throughout the entire corridor, 100 community presentations in 2023, 2024. For those of us that were lucky enough to ride it, there was a demonstration train from Denver through Boulder to Longmont. That's the top photo and actually the bottom photo as well. The first time that there's been passenger rail service on that line since the 60s. We did a fair amount of public opinion polling to kind of understand where this project stands in a public context and what people are most excited about for it and where they have kind of reservations. And then we did fairly robust financial modeling to evaluate kind of the costs of the project and a sales tax ask of voters. So a lot has been accomplished over the past year. Jacob said that the board would want to hear this, so this is always a fun slide to talk to. But for those of us that have been part of this conversation, we did evaluate a 24 ballot initiative and going to the ballot then for a sales tax ask to really raise the funding needed to support this project in a sustainable long-term sense. Ultimately, the board decided to not pursue a 24 ballot measure. I think some of the big reasons really are just we want to have the planning a little more complete. We want to be able to use harder numbers and more final plans so that we're able to truly deliver upon what we are going to the ballot with. And then also just really wanted to have more time to do outreach and coalition building and build some of that kind of local support and understanding before going to the ballot. So, 2-year look ahead. Well, ballot initiative in 26 is still on our horizon. I mentioned coalition building. We have a goal of continuing forth the study advisory team that RTD worked with as part of the Northwest Rail Peak Service Study, but then also broadening that base to do more stationary and local government coalitions, and that's kind of our big 2025 priority. Additionally, we're looking to do an economic impact study to really be able to demonstrate and quantify the economic benefits of this project, whether it be new jobs, new sales tax revenue, things like that, to really just show why this is such a critical piece for Colorado's future. And then again, working through the federal planning process, the SDP, the environmental clearance, as well as working with the state and RTD to implement our SB 24-184 requirements. I think you all understand this is an opportunity. Passenger rail is fast, safe, reliable. IIJA is exciting, and we will see how long the excitement for that rides. And this is kind of a way to help serve Coloradoans in the near term and then in the long term as well. And on that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Chrissy, any questions back about Front Range Passenger Rail? David Kretzinger.
You're one of the people I owe an email to. Nice to see you.
All good. Since you mentioned it, I was curious what the sales tax rate was that was looked at in the last year and what it would generate per year. Thanks.
Yep. We're looking at 0.23, and the generation, I'm going to screw this up because it's been a few months, but I want to say it was 200 to 300 million in revenue each year. Okay.
Ron?
Sorry, clarification on the answer to that question. Was that assuming that the sales tax was applied across the entirety of the existing district, regardless of the extent of a phase one of the project?
Yes, sir. So we were, that's the blue that you can barely see as the taxing district boundaries. We were pursuing kind of this question of the sales tax ask and kind of the service assumptions behind that, kind of in this time frame, and then sort of the 184 kind of go forth to the north first kind of came in that same sort of time frame. And so we have not sort of recalibrated yet to evaluate how a future sales tax ask would work in terms of project phasing and how we'd go to the voters for that kind of ask.
Jacob?
So first, just for the record, I want to make clear there's lots of things that matter to me.
Not just board appointment terms, okay.
But a serious question, Chrissy, thank you very much for the presentation. I know this is a touchy subject and probably not possible to answer, but I'll at least ask. Yep. Given the change of administration and the change in DC, any initial thought on how that may or may not kind of change the big picture things that the district is working on with this?
Yeah, that is the number one question. And, you know, we put forth a memo to our board last week trying to address that. I think long story short is it's too early to know what'll happen. 2025 will be a big year for Congress as it looks at the IIJA and reauthorization of it and how, what will be funded and to what level. I think that if anything, this moment really shows the value of a local taxing district and really the idea of Coloradoans helping Coloradoans. And we will continue to partner with federal administrations and work for opportunities to secure federal funding. But it does kind of ring home or ring true why this taxing district was created in the first place.
Any final comments or questions for Chrissy and Front Range Passenger Rail? Thank you, Chrissy. Thank you for the update. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Work in front of us. That concludes the discussion items for today. Administrative items. This was any updates from members or comments.
Jacob clearly scared the committee into silence today at the risk of a long committee meeting. So way to go, Jacob.
Thank you all for a very efficient meeting and robust discussion this afternoon. Our next meeting, if you did not sign in, please do check in at the sign-in table or find DRCOG staff to be sure you're signed in, to be sure you're recorded as attending. Thank you for your participation today. And again, due to the holiday schedule, our next meeting will be moved up to December 16th. We'll see you all then. Meeting is adjourned at 2:45 p.m. Thank you.